What's going on, everybody? In this video, I'm going to show you how to build MLB DFS lineups using the Sims tools that we have here at Stokastic.com, starting with building the lineups in the contest generator and then simulating them all in the Sims tool. And if you find this content helpful, like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. So where we're going to start is when you're on the Stokastic homepage. Well, how do you find the contest generator in the Sims tool? In the MLB drop-down menu, click where it says MLB DFS Simulator, and then you can scroll to the side and you'll see MLB Contest Generator. This is where it is that you are going to want to start. And now, a couple different things. First off, make sure that you have the correct sport selected that it is that you're looking to play for this video. We're building baseball lineups. And then also, make sure you have the correct site that you're playing on selected. So we have DraftKings, FanDuel, as well as Owner's Box, all supported within the Sims tool. I'm going to build DraftKings lineups here. Now, also make sure you have the correct slate selected that you're going to be playing. So whatever slates are available for that day, those are the slates that you're going to be seeing in here. Going to build lineups for the main slate here. Pool size. So you're going to have a few different options here. You do want to select the pool size that most closely emulates the contest you're playing in. So for example, let's say you're playing a single entry that only has 1,000 entries. Well, then you'd select 1,000. If you're playing in a large field tournament that say has 10,000 entries, even though 10,000 isn't an option for us in baseball, you'd want to select 5,000 because it is the closest number. It's also worth noting here that we have a couple of different Sims packages. There's the base package, which lets you build up to 500 lineups. And then there's the max package, which allows you to build up to 5,000 lineups. As far as stack type exposures, these are the default settings that we have in here. This is based on what our research shows us the field is expected to do as far as stack type goes. And you do want to build lineups in the contest generator that are expected to be close to what the field is going to be doing. So not going to be making any changes here, but if you do your own research and you find that you think that certain contests for whatever reason might have different than the default settings, that's where you might want to go ahead and make some changes here. As far as team controls, what you could do in here is you could remove any team that you want or boost individual teams. So here's a scenario where this might be useful. Let's say that there's 10 minutes to go until a baseball slate's about to start. A game is going to be starting in a rain delay. You think the game won't play. Well, then really quickly just remove all those players from your contest pool. You could go in here and just remove the entire team at once. But let's go ahead and generate the lineups now. And this isn't going to take all that long, something like 60 seconds or so to build the 5,000 lineups that I had selected here for the pool size. And what you are going to be doing here, or I should say what the contest generator is doing, you're really just sitting here waiting for it to finish building the lineups, is these lineups are supposed to be as close to what the field is going to be doing as possible. So what you have here is the pool exposure. That is akin to the ownership of all the players that are in the lineups that are built by the contest generator. And this is our ownership projection in our classic, our old ownership model, which is still available on the site. Now, what we have found in our research that the contest generator actually is more accurate as far as predicting ownership than what our old version of ownership projections were. So earlier in the season, there were times where I'd be using the contest generator and I would try to change some of the players in here by doing up and down boost ownership arrows to try to get them closer to our old projected ownership. But now that we know that the contest generator actually does build more accurate lineups in terms of projected ownership than what our old ownership model was, I just let the contest generator build what it does and I don't make any changes from there. However, if you do think something should be changed, where maybe you look at Chris Sale and you see, hey, Chris Sale landed in 62% of lineups built by the contest generator, and maybe you think he should be higher owned than that, then what you could do is you could do boosts his ownership as much as you feel fit, and then you could regenerate those lineups. And what that'll do is it'll rebuild a pool of lineups and it'll put Chris Sale into more lineups. But if you're happy with all of the ownership here, you don't have to make any changes. You could also do the inverse. You don't only have to make somebody more popular, you could also downgrade them to make them less popular. The one scenario where I do find this comes into play is it is a little bit tricky to predict what the field will do at times for some bad weather scenarios. So if a game's a little iffy to play, but maybe you don't want to take it out of your pool, there are times that I will lower the pool exposure just under the assumption I think the field might end up playing less of players that are in otherwise risky scenarios. But once you have all of this sorted out and you have your lineups built in the contest generator and have them matched what you believe is close to the field, you're ready to go ahead and simulate these lineups on the next page. Now, on our simulation page here, once again, make sure you have the right league, the right site, the right slate selected. The next thing you're going to want to do is select your percentage payout to first. Now, the way this works, it's pretty simple. If you're playing in a contest that has, let's say, $100,000 to first place and a $400,000 prize pool overall, you'd be selecting 25% to first because 100,000, well, that's 25% of 400,000. So that's how you figure out what percentage first that it should be here. It's the overall prize to first divided by the entire prize pool. That's how you're going to land on your percentage to first. Most contests are right around 25%. We have other options in here as well for other contests. And just make sure that you have the right one selected for the contest you're playing in. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to leave it at 25%. Now, some other information in here that you will see. We have lineup confirmation as well as projected lineups. If you see a player whose name is in green and you scroll over them, you'll see confirmed lineup. That means that that player has been confirmed to be in that lineup spot. And then if you see somebody in yellow, like Corey Seager here, then this is possible lineup. That's what our projected lineup is for the day, but not necessarily totally confirmed. You see some other information here as well, position of players, what team they're on, the opponent they're on. And now what you could also do within here is you could change a player's fantasy point projection. So let's say you think that the fantasy point projection is too low on Chris Sale. Well, you could just go in here and type in whatever you want. You could go 22, for instance. If then you think you made a mistake, you could roll it back. You could also really easily press the plus arrow. That's going to give them one extra fantasy point, or the minus arrow that is going to be -1 fantasy point. If you have your own custom projections, really, really easy to upload them now. All you have to do is create a CSV with these different columns, one that says player name, one that says projection, and one that says ownership. If you have that CSV, you could upload it directly here, and it'll change all of these projections for you. So whatever you have in the CSV you upload, it'll change the fantasy point projections and the ownership projections based on what it is that you have in your file. Once this is all set and ready to go, you got all the right slate selected, the right sport and all that, percentage to first, you got your projections where you want them. The next thing you're going to do is run the contest simulation. Now, what is happening when we press run contest simulation? If you recall, all those lineups we built in the contest generator, we built 5,000 lineups. These lineups are now playing each other 40,000 times. So the entire slate is being simulated 40,000 times on a pitch-by-pitch basis. So every single time that a pitcher throws a pitch to a batter, whether it's put in play or not, there's a ton of different scenarios that could happen. And these are all being accounted for in the sims for the ultimate endpoint of trying to identify of all those lineups we built in the contest generator, which ones are expected to be most profitable. Because what is going to happen as the slate is being simmed out all of those times is the lineups are then going to be ranked. And they're going to be ranked based on what the expected ROI of those lineups was. And it's under the assumption that they're playing in a GPP with the percentage payout to first that you selected here. So every time that a lineup cashes, that's a certain amount of money that it's expected to earn. Every single time it comes in first, that's an expected amount of money that it's supposed to earn. And then, of course, as well, if it doesn't cash, then that would be $0 for that individual sim run. And then after 40,000 simulations are done, we're going to have a good ranking of which lineups actually perform the best. And that'll be done right now. So now after this is done, you'll see all of the lineups are sorted here based on simulated ROI. So this is what the expected return of each of those lineups was per sim run. You'll also see here the amount of projected fantasy points for each lineup, the amount of total ownership they had, the teams that are included in the stacks, the stack type, which could be anything from 4-3, 4-2, 5-3, 5-2, all different sorts of stack types that you'll see in MLB. This is the percentage of time that the lineup won, which means it came in first in a simulation run. This is the percentage of time that it came in the top 10 of a GPP, and this is the percentage of time that it cashed. This is the amount of time that the lineups were duped. Not something we typically have to worry about for baseball. It does come into play a little bit more for small baseball slates. So if there's like 2 or 3 games, for the most part, though, you're not going to run into baseball lineups that are duped all that frequently. Then, of course, here, these are all the players in each individual lineup, as well as the salary used in all of those. So now for myself, I'm typically playing 150 lineup. So I go ahead and I select favorite top 150. But if you're not playing 150 lineups, let's say you're playing 100, you favorite that. If you're playing 20 lineups, you favorite that. Or if you're playing a very specific amount of lineups, like let's say you're playing 76, you can type in 76 and then done, and it'll favorite your top 76 lineups. I'm going to favorite 150 for this. So it'll just unfavorite the ones that I already selected. And now I'll favorite the top 150. Now, there's a bunch of different information that we could get from the Sims here. Player ROI, which individual players in our run of Sims had the highest ROI across all those lineups. You could also see the stack ROI. So it's going to show you the different types of stacks and how profitable they're expected to be, as well as the different teams of those individual stacks. Favorites, this is going to be the favorite page of just all the lineups that we had favorited before on the lineups page. And then exposures. This is what's going to be most important to us for rooting interest on individual slate. Who is that we actually rostered? And you could see all the individual players, the amount of exposure we got to them. So here I have Chris Sale in 70.7% of lineups. The pool ownership was 61.8%. These are his projected fantasy points. And then the leverage, that's just the difference between the player's exposure in our lineups and the pool exposure. So the more highly leveraged the number is here, that is the percentage overweight to the field you are on that individual player. And then the inverse, that is true as well. So for instance here, Davis Daniel project for 15.5% ownership. He's in 4.7% of my top lineup. So I'm 11.5% underweight to the field on Davis Daniel. So if the slate locked right now and these are the lineups I was entering, I'd be rooting against Davis Daniel and Andrew Abbott, where I'd be rooting for players like Kyder Montero and Corey Seager, who I'm overweight to the field to. You could also click on the stack exposures here, and you could see all of your different exposures here for 5-man stacks. You could see that we had 28% of Texas as the most roster team in this run of Sims, 14% of the Minnesota Twins. And you can see down here, a team like the Angels, we don't have any 5-man stacks of, but there was 0.7% 3-man stacks. So you can see the 4-man stack exposures as well as the 3-man stack exposures. Now, the next question you probably want to be wondering is, how do you customize some of these lineups? Well, one way you could do it is by changing some of the projected fantasy points for players before we simulated the slate. That'll customize some of the lineups for you. It's also worth noting that all the lineups that are built in the contest generator, those are going to be unique on a run-by-run basis. Just because you run a sim and you build lineups in the contest generator and somebody else builds them with the same settings, it doesn't mean that it's going to give you the same lineups. It is going to build different lineups each different time you run lineups through the contest generator, and there could be minorly different results as well after you simulate those lineups. In general, though, it's still going to identify the same stacks as being the top stacks, same pitchers as being the top pitchers. Now, if we go ahead and want to make other sort of customized adjustments to lineups, we could do boost to players. So what we're doing on this page is we're going in and we are artificially changing the ROI of individual players, and that can make them show up in lineups either more or less frequently. So let's just say here, Chris Sale is in 70% of lineups just about, and maybe that's more Chris Sale than you want. Well, you could go in, you could say, well, I'm going to lower his ROI by 20%. And now if you go and you unfavorite your top lineups and refavorite them, we're going to land on less of Chris Sale because every single lineup with Chris Sale just got a 20% ROI decrease. So as a result, when you go over here and you look at our pitchers, we went from having over 70% of Chris Sale down to 36%. So that just about cut our exposure to Chris Sale in half. Now we could also clear all the boosts here and then click boost ROI, and now that will reset the boost that we did to Chris Sale. So now when you refavorite it, we'll be back at that 70% mark on him. Now, if you want to change an entire team at once, you could do that as well. And also in the same way that I downgraded the ROI of Chris Sale, you do the inverse and upgrade the ROI of an individual player, and that'll do the same thing, but just get you to more of them as opposed to less. Now, if you want to change an entire team, you could click on Stack Boost here, and now you could go, let's say we want more of the Twins. Just really want to jam the Twins on this slate. Let's give them a 15% stack boost. Now, every single lineup that has a Minnesota Twins stack in it is going to get a 15% ROI increase. So now when you go and you look at our stack exposures, we're going to be getting to a lot more Twins than we had before. We now have 26% as a 5-man stack, 12% as a 4-man stack, 15% as a 3-man stack. Because when we do the stack boost, it doesn't only change the 5-man stack ROI or only the 3-man stack. It's every single 3, 4, 5-man stack of that team. They all see an ROI increase when we do that ROI boost. So that's another way that you could customize some of your lineups. And then also, if you ever want to roll back any of the changes you made, just clear the boosts, and then that will end up resetting the boost that we already had. You just have to click boost ROI after that. That's it. That's really as easy as it is to use the Sims tool. On the front end, it's not all that complicated. There's a lot that goes on in the back end to make it run 40,000 Sims and build out 5,000 lineups. But for yourself, really all you have to do to build profitable MLB DFS lineups using the Sims tool is just a couple clicks of the button. Build lineups in the contest generator, simulate them in the Sims tool, and that is a way to make yourself build better lineups than you probably already are on your own playing MLB DFS. And that's it for me. If you have any questions, leave them below in the comments section. If you haven't done yet, like this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel.